Today I'm here to share with you another heart-wrenching tale. On that fateful Sunday, August 17, 2014, Robert Limon, a devoted 38-year-old family man, found himself covering a colleague's shift at the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway train yard in Tehachapi, California. It wasn't out of the ordinary for Robert to go above and beyond at work. His dedication was well known. Living in Silver Lake's Helendale, Kern County with his wife, Sabrina Limon, and their 2 children, Robert promised he'd be home after his shift. However, as evening descended, Robert failed to return. Sabrina, initially unperturbed by his silence, later grew anxious when her attempts to reach him went unanswered. Around 5 p.m., Sabrina, preoccupied with her mother's recent hip injury, sent Robert a text message. But as the hours passed without a response, worry gnawed at her. By 8 p.m., with Robert still absent, Sabrina's concern escalated. Then came the knock on the door. 2 of Robert's colleagues arrived with grim news. He'd been injured at work. Sabrina, interpreting this as a workplace accident, later realized the horrifying truth. Police investigations unveiled the chilling reality. Robert hadn't fallen victim to an accident, but had been intentionally murdered. When pressed for motives or suspects, Sabrina and those close to Robert were at a loss. They couldn't fathom who would wish harm upon him. Described as affable and carefree by colleagues, friends, and family, Robert Limon appeared to have no known enemies. In response to the tragedy, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railway offered a substantial reward of $100,000 for any information leading to the apprehension and conviction of Robert's murderer. Robert's lifeless body was discovered inside a railway yard building around 6:46 p.m., having been last seen by co-workers roughly an hour earlier. He had sustained 2 gunshot wounds, one to the face, passing through and exiting his neck, and another to the chest, with the bullet lodging in his jaw. Law enforcement managed to obtain surveillance footage from a security camera capturing a mysterious figure wandering the railway yard. This individual, clad in bulky attire and limping noticeably, broadened the scope of the investigation. Additional footage from a nearby gas station showed someone resembling the figure on a motorcycle, aligning closely with the suspected time of the murder. As authorities explored various angles, including the possibility of a robbery gone awry, Sabrina turned to social media to express her deep sorrow and admiration for Robert. Despite the ongoing investigation, the motive behind Robert's targeted killing remained elusive. Amidst the unbearable pain and tragedy, Rob's love endures. We were blessed with Rob's presence for the time we had, and the love he bestowed upon us surpassed what many may ever experience or express. I will carry his love with me wherever I tread, and I will ensure our children are reminded of it each day as they mature. It's a bittersweet feeling of joy, yet I am completely numb to the reality of being left behind on this earth without him. As police delved deeper into Robert's life in search of potential motives, they received a call from a man named Jason Bertine. Jason and his wife, Kelly, were known to be close friends of Sabrina and Robert. However, as investigators continued their inquiries, they unearthed a more complex relationship between them. It emerged that they were not just friends, but were involved in a swinger-type group where couples engaged in sexual activities with others, and the Limons were active participants. Despite this revelation, Jason's call to the police wasn't related to their lifestyle. He expressed concerns about a man named Jonathan Hearn and urged authorities to speak with him. This revelation added a new layer of complexity to the investigation. Jason disclosed to the police that he had become aware of Sabrina's extramarital affair with Jonathan Hearn, a 24-year-old firefighter whom he knew through work and mutual social gatherings. Despite Jason's confrontation with Jonathan, imploring him to cease the affair, his warnings were futile, and Sabrina and Jonathan continued their relationship. According to Jason, his initial interaction with Jonathan involved him becoming emotionally overwhelmed and expressing his displeasure in a confrontational manner. Additionally, Jason's wife, Kelly, recounted observing Jonathan visiting Sabrina's residence shortly after Robert's murder, bearing a significant bouquet of flowers specifically noted as Sabrina's favorites. Notably, Jonathan sent Jason a series of text messages following Robert's death, which struck Jason as peculiar and prompted him to contact the authorities. These messages from Jonathan appeared to be centered around seeking forgiveness for his perceived wrongdoing. Kelly also revealed that Sabrina shared with her a letter she received from Jonathan praising Robert's character and expressing remorse for his actions. Despite the absence of any arrests in connection with Robert's death, Sabrina appeared to be noticeably content about the letter, prompting Kelly's unease regarding the situation. Kelly recounted Sabrina's reaction, saying, "Isn't this sweet? Listen to this. Listen to how sweet Jonathan is." Detectives harbored suspicions regarding Jonathan and Sabrina's involvement in Robert's death. However, they opted not to disclose their knowledge of the affair to Sabrina during the ongoing investigation. Instead, they subtly probed into Sabrina's marriage, utilizing Robert's phone, which contained explicit images of various women, including Sabrina herself. When questioned about possible infidelity or an open marriage arrangement, Sabrina adamantly denied any such arrangement, asserting that she and Robert had a strong relationship. Sabrina's denial only fueled the detectives' suspicions. If they were engaged in a consensual open relationship, why lie? This discrepancy prompted further doubts about Sabrina's honesty and raised questions about what else she might be concealing. Over the course of a 3-month investigation, evidence confirmed Sabrina's long-term affair with Jonathan, spanning nearly 2 years. Detectives, utilizing wiretaps and strategic planning, devised a simple yet effective strategy. They provided Sabrina with false details about their investigation and monitored whether she would divulge this information to Jonathan. Sabrina's subsequent sharing of these fabricated details validated the detectives' suspicions. The recordings of Sabrina's calls with the detective revealed a troubling pattern. Shortly after ending conversations with law enforcement, she would promptly contact Jonathan and divulge the details of their discussions. Their conversations, captured in these recordings, often centered around their professed love for each other, acknowledgement of their sins, and their shared quest for divine forgiveness. Their conversations were laden with pleas for divine absolution, with Jonathan acknowledging, "We've been dirtbags, we've been sinners." As the investigation unfolded, law enforcement officers meticulously gathered information not only through phone recordings, but also by scrutinizing surveillance footage and following up on tips phoned into the hotline. When authorities obtained a clearer image of the individual captured in the surveillance footage, they presented it to Sabrina, citing a tip identifying the man as someone named J.N., who had connections to Robert. Upon questioning, Sabrina provided the names of 2 men she knew named J.N., but notably omitted any mention of Jonathan. However, others familiar with Jonathan recognized him in the image and promptly alerted the police. Both Jonathan and Sabrina were arrested and questioned in relation to Robert's murder. Sabrina was released due to a lack of evidence, while Jonathan faced charges of first-degree murder. Sabrina was informed that she would be summoned to testify against Jonathan, yet this scenario never materialized. However, unbeknownst to Sabrina at the time, Jonathan had decided to cooperate with the authorities. In exchange for his cooperation and to avoid the prospect of a life sentence without parole, Jonathan entered a guilty plea for manslaughter. He was subsequently sentenced to 25 years and 4 months in prison. Jonathan acknowledged his culpability for voluntary manslaughter with firearm enhancement, attempted murder, poisoning, and accessory to murder. Meanwhile, Sabrina found herself charged with first-degree murder, to which she pleaded not guilty. During Sabrina's trial, the prosecution argued that while Jonathan physically carried out the act of shooting and killing Robert, Sabrina was an active participant in the planning and execution of the murder, thus making her equally culpable. Prosecutor Eric Smith emphasized to the court that there was substantial evidence beyond Jonathan's testimony implicating Sabrina, including wiretapped phone calls, text messages, and her deceitful behavior towards law enforcement. These pieces of evidence, Smith contended, pointed towards Sabrina's complicity in facilitating the crime. The court was presented with details regarding the extensive communication between Sabrina and Jonathan on the day of Robert's murder, with Jonathan placing 5 calls to Sabrina totaling 3 hours and 43 minutes of conversation. Furthermore, the prosecution highlighted Sabrina's role in providing Jonathan with information about Robert's whereabouts and work schedule on the day of the incident. Prosecutors argued that Sabrina's motive for orchestrating her husband's murder stemmed from her desire for a new life with Jonathan. They asserted that Sabrina aimed to eliminate Robert so she could marry Jonathan and have him assume a paternal role for her children. Additionally, the prosecution pointed out a potential financial incentive for Sabrina as she stood to gain $300,000 from life insurance payouts and could potentially receive a settlement from Robert's employer due to his death occurring at the workplace. Jonathan emerged as the key witness for the prosecution, providing crucial testimony regarding the planning and execution of Robert's murder. He accounted to the court that both he and Sabrina concluded that the only way they could proceed with their relationship was if Robert was no longer alive. Their desire was for Jonathan to assume the role of the children's caregiver with the intention of raising them in a God-fearing environment. Throughout his testimony, Jonathan emphasized their shared commitment to their faith, citing their love for God and the Bible. He detailed the extensive planning involved in Robert's murder, revealing that he had fallen deeply in love with Sabrina over the course of their 2-year affair, and they were determined to eliminate the obstacle posed by her husband. Jonathan described the events of August 17, 2014, recalling how he returned home after a night shift and subsequently conferred with Sabrina over the phone about their plan before proceeding to the train yard to carry out the deed. He testified that they meticulously discussed the layout of the railway complex and devised strategies to avoid detection. Sabrina, aware of Robert's potentially confrontational nature, cautioned Jonathan to exercise caution, acknowledging that Robert was not someone who would surrender without resistance. Jonathan informed the court that he rode his motorcycle to Tehachapi, having removed the license plate and brought along a backpack containing a change of clothes and a .45 caliber handgun equipped with a makeshift silencer crafted from a large Maglite flashlight barrel and engine freeze plugs. Upon arriving at the Burlington Northern Santa Fe train yard where Robert was employed, Jonathan observed Robert in a garage. He then positioned himself between nearby buildings, contemplating his next actions. After saying a prayer, Jonathan entered the garage and engaged in a brief conversation with Robert. Seizing an opportune moment when Robert turned away to stock a refrigerator, Jonathan drew the handgun, approached him, and fatally shot him. Jonathan justified his actions by stating it was inevitable for Robert to be eliminated for Sabrina and him to progress in their relationship. Following the initial gunshot, Jonathan proceeded to the office where he pilfered some items, later explaining to the court that he and Sabrina believed it would be advantageous for the incident to appear as a robbery. Returning to the location where Robert lay, Jonathan fired a second shot as a precautionary measure, ensuring Robert's demise. He recounted notifying Sabrina of the deed, and they mutually agreed to refrain from contacting each other for a period to evade suspicion. Jonathan expressed experiencing a sense of relief after the killing. The court heard that just days after Robert was murdered, Sabrina sent multiple text messages to Jonathan, expressing her love for him without questioning who could have killed her husband. According to Jonathan's testimony, the day Robert was killed wasn't the first attempt on his life. Months prior to the murder, they had plotted to poison Robert. Jonathan stated that they had ordered arsenic onlin and mixed it into banana pudding, intending for Robert to consume it during lunch at work. The prosecution urged the jury to consider not only Jonathan's testimony, but also Sabrina's conversations on wiretapped calls and thousands of text messages when determining her guilt. In contrast, the defense argued that the only evidence against Sabrina was Jonathan's testimony, which they deemed unreliable. They portrayed Jonathan as a cold and calculated killer who had received a lighter sentence through a plea deal, characterizing the prosecution's reliance on him as striking a pact with the devil. Sabrina took the stand during her trial and confessed to having an affair with Jonathan, but maintained that she was unaware of his plan to kill her husband. The jury learned that Sabrina provided Jonathan with directions to Robert's workplace and details of his work hours on the day of the shooting, using a disposable phone to communicate with him. In her testimony, Sabrina claimed she shared her husband's work schedule with Jonathan solely because she desired to meet with him. Sabrina testified that initially she was content in her marriage to Robert. However, their relationship dynamics shifted in 2008 when they began exploring a swingers lifestyle, which she described as altering the sanctity of their bond. Despite this, she affirmed her love for Robert and hadn't even contemplated leaving him. However, the introduction of this lifestyle led to increased alcohol consumption and a focus on excessive partying and sexual activities, causing strain on their relationship. During her testimony, Sabrina revealed that she met Jonathan at a challenging point in her marriage while she was working at Costco distributing samples. Initially, their interaction was a friendship, but Jonathan, seeing her a few times at Costco, eventually asked for her number. Sabrina explained to the court that she started developing feelings for him as he was intelligent and genuinely focused on her, making her feel special in a way she hadn't experienced before. Describing the affair as a kind of second life, Sabrina made plans with Jonathan about their shared dreams, while still expressing love for her husband, Robert. She emphasized to the court that she never entertained the thought of harming her husband. When questioned by her lawyer about why she initially lied to the police regarding any involvement with someone else, Sabrina admitted it was due to embarrassment. She didn't want her personal life to become public. The lawyer highlighted the recorded calls and text messages, arguing that there was no evidence within them indicating Sabrina's knowledge of Jonathan's plan to kill Robert. He stated, "There's nothing in there that says, 'Oh, by the way, get rid of my husband for me.'" The court heard emotional pleas from Sabrina's two children, who begged the court not to separate them from their mother. After deliberating for less than 6 hours, the jury rendered their verdict. Sabrina was found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, soliciting murder, and being an accessory after the fact. However, she was acquitted of charges related to attempted murder and poisoning in connection to the pudding incident. Sabrina was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, with an additional 16 months to be served consecutively. Despite the support from her family, including her cousin, who denounced the verdict as unjust and questioned the credibility of Jonathan's testimony, the jury's decision was based on a thorough examination of all the evidence presented, including Jonathan's testimony and recordings. What do you think of today's story? Write your opinion about this case in the comments. I thank you for your attention and recommend subscribing to the channel, as well as clicking on the bell to not miss new videos that are released daily. Take care of yourself and your loved ones. See you soon.